So in our series of review lessons, this is a video on subtraction procedures. As it is a review lesson and not a full lesson, it's going to touch briefly on a number of different things like setting up the subtraction problems, borrowing across zeros, etc. But it's not going to stop and build up any one of those concepts, as it is assumed that you've seen this before, and this is simply a review of the process and how to go through it. And much like adding, we have one most important thing about subtracting, and that is making sure that we align our place values. That is, regardless of whether we have just whole numbers or we have whole numbers and decimals, we make sure our ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, tenths, hundredths, etc. are all aligned. And we do that by making sure that our decimal point is aligned and that our numbers are all clearly in one column or another. If we do that, we are guaranteed to make sure that we have our two numbers, the minuend and the subtrahend, aligned for use with subtraction. Now, this isn't a video about decimal subtraction, just about subtraction generally, so we are going to focus just on using whole numbers. So we've got 4 example problems to go through, and then we'll go through 4 problems for you to work on in sets of 2 like they are in the adding lesson, and that will be it. So first, let's see some examples of setting up the subtractions and going through those processes. Now, in the first one, we have 4,579, and we're going to subtract 207. We're going to make sure our hundreds, tens, and ones are all in the right place. Set it up vertically, and then just subtract column by column. 9 minus 7 is 2. 7 minus 0 is 7. 5 minus 2 is 3. 4 minus nothing is 3. So the difference is 3,372. In our second problem, we have 883 minus 75, again, making sure the columns are all set up. Here, we have a problem because we have in our ones column a 3, take away 5, but you can't take 5 away from 3. So what we do, as you'll recall, is borrow from the tens place. We take the 8, we're going to borrow a 10. That 1 10 is going to become 10 ones. So in the ones column, we're going to have 3 plus 10, or 13 ones. It is the same number. It is still 883, but 800 with 7 tens and 13 ones gives you the same value. So we're not changing that number. We're just rearranging how all of the place values are oriented. 13 minus 5 is 8. 7 now, not 8, minus 7 is 0, and 8 minus 0 is 8. So the difference is 808. For our next 2 problems, we have 3,605. We're going to subtract 326. Now when we do this, again, we see that we have a 5 and we want to take away 6, which we can't do because 6 is greater than 5. But the problem is now we can't borrow from the 0 next to it. So we're going to go all the way back to the next possible place that we can, which is in the hundreds. We're going to borrow 100. But that 100 is going to turn into 10 tens, because 1 100 is the same as 10 tens. Now that doesn't help us with the ones, except that we can now borrow from those 10 tens and make it into a 9 instead, and add 10 ones from one of those tens. So now we have 15 minus 6 is 9. 9 minus 2 is 7. 5 minus 3 is 2. And 3 minus 0 is 3. And finally, one more example problem, putting a lot of that together. 2,045. We're going to subtract 1,386. So very quickly, we need to borrow for the 5. So that makes the tens into a 3. 15 minus 6 is 9. Recall, we only ever borrow from the minuend, never in the subtrahend. And so for the 3, we can't take away 8 from 3, so we have to go all the way over to the hundreds, make that a 1. Make that a 10, which becomes a 9. And now our tens is a 13. 13 minus 8 is 5. 9 minus 3 is 6. 1 minus 1 is 0. So the difference is 659. And after that brief review, go ahead and pause the video. We've got 2 problems here and 2 problems on the next page. Work through these problems, see what you can do, and come back when you're ready to go through the answers. So very quickly, 846 minus 324. 6 minus 4 is 2. 4 minus 2 is 2. 8 minus 3 is 5. 522. 1,073 minus 926. Can't take 6 away from 3, so we're going to borrow from the 7, make the 7 into a 6. Add 10 ones, which makes the 3 a 13. 13 minus 6 is 7. 6 minus 2 is 4. We can't take 9 away from 0, but we can borrow from the thousands to make 10 100s. 10 minus 9 is 1, and 0 minus 0 is, well, 0. So the difference is 147. Now for the next set of problems, go ahead and pause the video, work on these two, and come back when you're ready. These are the last two problems in the video lesson. Pause the video and come back when you're ready to go through them. So for the first one here, we have 8,354. We're going to take away 649. Now we can't take 9 away from 4, so we're going to have to borrow from the 10s. 14 minus 9 is 5. 4 minus 4 is 0. We can't take 6 away from 3, so we're going to borrow from the 8. Make the hundreds into a 13 instead of a 3. 13 minus 6 is 7, and 7 minus 0 is 7. So the difference is 7,705. Now finally, for the last one, we have 10,000 minus 1,009. Now here, we can't borrow from anything until we get all the way to the 10,000s. So that becomes a 7. And now that makes the thousands a 10. But we still need to borrow, so the thousands becomes a 9, makes the hundreds a 10. We still need to borrow, so that hundreds becomes a 9, makes the tens a 10. That 10 becomes a 9 and makes the ones a 10. So 10 minus 9 is 1, 9 minus 0 is 9, 9 minus 0 is 9, 9 minus 1 is 8, and 0 minus 0 is, well, 0. So the difference is 8,991. Just to review, the most important thing that we have in subtraction is making sure our place values align. If we can just subtract from lowest place value to highest place value, we do. Otherwise, we borrow and add 10 of whatever the next higher place value is to that column. And if we're borrowing from a 0, we have to go across and do a series of borrowings, just like in the last problem, that allow us to borrow and finally do the subtraction.